Welcome to today's Founders Talk. Today, Founders Talks are really designed to give you guys the ability to get insight or glean insight from people who we consider thought leaders. And the way that the format we're gonna follow is we're gonna take a specific subject every week and run through it. And it follows like the social lean business model canvas. And so today, one of the things we want to talk about is purpose, right? And our guest is obviously Ben Hoyer, who's the COO of Rally, and then also is a very good person to really kick off this topic, because not only does he does Rally, but he also partners with myself with the Credo Conduit. He has a coffee shop, but what you'll find really interesting is that the work that he does is all driven by a very singular purpose. So anyway, we want to welcome Ben today, and we want to talk about purpose. So Ben, I guess let's just start off with just giving us a little glimpse about like who you are, kind of like your story, and how you led up to the moment that you realized the purpose that you wanted to hang over your life or your work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who I am and how I walked up to the purpose.
Yeah, how you walked up to the purpose.
Yeah,
I think that's very important to understand.
Cool.
That.
So, I'm married. And yeah, and I have a couple kids. And about 10 years ago, so 2010, we had been married for 7 years and probably moved like 6 or 8 times in that 7 years. And so it felt like a lot. And every time that we moved, it was the kind of move where you knew you were going to move again. And so we would unpack our boxes, and then we would collapse the boxes and save them. We would put them in the closet in the back. And because we knew we were going to move again, and so we didn't want to have to find new boxes. And so we would always collapse these boxes and save them. And in 2010, I grew up outside of Orlando, and by 2010 we had 2 kids. I was done with school, and so we were buying a house. We were moving into Orlando. We were buying a house, and when we bought that house, we unpacked the boxes, and something happened when we unpacked the boxes, because I realized I didn't have another move on the horizon. And so I had these boxes that had been with me in like 3 different states, 6 different moves. That had been with me when I started, first being married, 1 kid, 2 kids, these boxes that I had carried around with me all the time, 6 years, 3 different states, and I realized I didn't need them anymore. And so I took these boxes and I put them on the curb to put them in the trash. And there was something kind of surprisingly cathartic about, like, I'm throwing out these boxes and I'm committing to this place, and I don't have another move on the horizon. And that was kind of the genesis for me of like saying, I want to have a purpose for my life that I feel like can support the weight of my life. And by that I mean, like, I had decided I wanted to do something that when I looked back on my life, I would like who I was. And what I learned pretty quickly was I couldn't predict who I would be 20 or 30 years from now, what measure of success or accomplishment I would be proud of. But I could predict what sort of person I wanted to be. And I started to think that my quality of life is more tied to who I'm becoming than what I have. And if I become a person of meaning, impact, and community, then no matter how much stuff I have, I'll like my life better. So, like, kind of right in that spot, 10 years ago, I started to say, the purpose for my life is going to be to pay attention to who I'm becoming and try and help other people, challenge them to consider that their quality of life is more tied to who they're becoming than what they have.
And so I've heard this story quite a few times, and when I talk about purpose, I often think of it as a banner, and then the things that I do professionally or vocationally are tools which allow me to move that forward. And so my question to you is just like, do you think of it similarly? How did your purpose shape what you did or what you're doing now, or what the things that you chose to do?
Yeah, so then it was like, okay, I'm going to make choices about how I spend my time, what I do with my energy. I'm going to make choices about that align with this purpose that I have. So rather than saying, I want to reach this point in a career, I want to make this many dollars, I want to work for this company, I started saying, I want to be this kind of person, and how do I do that? And I follow that purpose. So I started to think about, if I want to become a person of meaning, impact, and community, how do I start becoming that locally in the relationships that are available to me? Pretty quickly, I found I wanted to be a person of impact in my city, in Orlando. And so I went to 4 nonprofits. I said, what are you not doing that you'd like to be doing? Rather than reinvent the wheel, just help people that are already doing good work. And they gave me a bunch of jobs, and I marshaled friends, and we organized end of summer parties. We helped them rebuild websites. We built vegetable gardens. We were just kind of doing all this stuff, and I was really enjoying arm twisting my friends and getting them to have a tangible impact in the city. And I began to realize I would like this, but if I'm going to make a life out of this, I'm going to spend all my time raising money in order to fund these projects. And I don't want to spend all my time raising money. That's not fun. Like convincing people to give you money for stuff, or trying to guilt them into giving you money for stuff. It's just, I didn't want to do that. So then I started to think about, what could I sell that would accomplish this purpose, that would raise money? And I had a friend of a friend who had been going down to Guatemala with his Rotary. And this is interesting. His Rotary group had been going to very rural villages in Guatemala and bringing them computers for their school and clean water filters for their homes. And he owned a bagel shop in Gainesville, and he saw that these dudes that he was bringing water filters to had a little bit of land they'd inherited from their parents or something that had been in the family. And this part of Guatemala, coffee just like grows like weeds. You know, they're like 4,000 to 6,000 feet elevation up in the mountains. It's like perfect environment for growing coffee. They were picking coffee for large farmers and then kind of cobbling a little bit together, and through a very broken and exploitative system, trying to make a little bit of money off of it. And he had a coffee roaster in the back of his bagel shop. So he said, man, it would be way better for them if I could buy coffee, and instead of just bringing water filters and computers for their school, if I could actually inject money into their capital system. So he had to work for a while to get them to produce good enough coffee. But when I started to think, what could I sell that would be a small step for people towards meaning, impact, and community, I remembered this story about this guy, that he was kind of subverting the traditional supply chain in order to allow coffee to be a positive impact in the world rather than neutral or even worse, exploitative.
So a lot of people don't. So Ben owns locally a few coffee shops, 3 at the time, called Downtown Credo. They're spread out here. It used to be donation based coffee, but now it's name your own price coffee. And so I've heard you talk about this a few times, but like for you, living a life of meaning, community impact, it seems like there's 2 points. There's one, the relationship you have with the farmer or the grower, and then there's also then how you bring that coffee and use coffee to do that within locally the community that you're in. And so I want you to kind of talk about how you do that with both the grower and the farmer, and then how you then use coffee to do that, build meaning, impact, community locally around your coffee shops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell us that story.
Right. Cool. So I went with the dude down to Guatemala, met him, realized that it's possible to buy coffee from people at a micro scale and get it to the States. It is not easy. It takes like generous people that are interested in having a positive impact and maybe making a little bit of money, but probably breaking even, right? And so that's how he was doing it, with the help of some people, getting coffee from these very micro growers into the States, roasting it and making it available. What I like about that is, like, every product that you buy, you're a part of a supply chain. And what I started to think of is, like, when I buy a product, I'm sanctioning that whole supply chain. So then if I subvert the traditional supply chain and go to one that's having a positive impact, now all of a sudden my purchase becomes a small step towards impact. I like myself better when I have the kind of courage to believe that I can have a positive impact, that there are no problems so big that I just have to throw up my hands and say, I hope someone else figures it out.
Gotcha.
I like life better when I believe I can have a positive impact on the world. And this coffee story was energizing because I realized I drink coffee every day, but if I pay attention to the way that coffee gets to me, coffee can be a small step towards me becoming a person of impact in the world. And so that's what we did. So we have 3 origin stories right now, and they all are that sort of story. So our Guatemalan, we partnered with that guy in Gainesville for a while, and now he's continuing to sell their coffee, but we don't have to go through him because we're buying enough that we can go directly to that partner importer. And it's one guy, it takes us 20 minutes to walk around all the plants, literally dirt floor home, a bucket to water filtration system. And over the 10 years, they've been able to build a cooperative to work together, increase their production so they don't have to outsource their production, so more of the money stays with them. Increase their quality of living, meaning because they have a predictable, generous sales that beat, 30% better than any other market price they would get because they're getting more of the money, less of it is going out to middlemen. And so we have a relationship like that in Guatemala, in Chiapas, and in Honduras right now. And so at origin, it's as direct as you can get. I got a readout from our Mexican supplier the other day that 80% of what I spend is going directly to the growers, and another 12% is being used to help them increase their capacity, buy new nursery plants, buy implements so that's a total of 92% of what I spend on coffee going directly to the growers, right?
Okay.
That is unheard of in the supply chain of coffee. When you have 10 to 15 people in between you and middlemen, you just don't do that. The only way you do that is find really creative partners who are motivated by a very similar purpose.
Yeah. So how do you so that's how you create meaning, impact, and increase the quality of life for the growers. Now, how do you connect people here locally with that, and what does that look like?
Yeah, we were just talking, Benito and I were just talking about the challenge of social enterprise is getting the balance of how much do people actually care about your impact and how much do they just want a product that solves the problem they have. And this is a real interesting line for us in a coffee shop because on one level, especially when we started, I was behind the counter every day and people would ask about the coffee and I'd be like, the coffee's great, but let me tell you about Samuel, who I met. And I'd go off on my visit to Samuel and the plight of the coffee and the situation of the coyotes in Central America and how exploited the system is and how much better this system is. And they were like, whoa, dude, I haven't even had my coffee yet. Just give me a cup of black coffee,
Right.
And so the major way that we drive the impact home to our customers is by letting them name their price. And so they get to decide. They come, they get a latte, a macchiato, a drip coffee, and we say, how much would you like to pay today? And if they say, what do you mean? Then our next step is to say, we think buying a cup of coffee is a big deal. There's no such thing as local coffee for us here. So every time you buy a cup, you're affecting dozens of people's lives. And we wouldn't presume to sell that to you. We want to give you the opportunity to join us in having a positive impact in those dozens of lives by naming your price. And so that's how we try and drive it home. It doesn't always go all the way. And it wins us some customers, it doesn't win us all customers. The quality of our coffee wins us some customers,
Right.
But it's this interesting balance to figure out how much do you push the social mission into their face when they don't even want to hear it versus how much do you just deliver a product that they're going to want.
Do you feel a tension to not do that at times? I know one of the things is when you're trying to stay on task with driving a purpose and you see that maybe it's not, it doesn't resonate as much with people and it's just another thing for you to lift and you can just simply just get rid of it and just sell good coffee. Is there a tension there? Do you feel a tension with just selling good coffee and just leave it at that, or do you feel like you have to still, even if it's only 5 or 10% of the people, you still have to constantly bring up the social component over the purpose or the mission of Credo?
I definitely can't.
Separate the two.
I can't not tell the impact piece. And it becomes more important the more crowded of a market you're in, right? Because this is our distinctive. We can be social impact coffee in a way that no one else can be social impact coffee, because of the way we're sourcing it and because of the way we're letting you name your price. Now this is having an impact on origin and consumer at the same time.
Gotcha.
And so, yeah, a lot of people maybe just pay whatever the suggested amount is and don't think about it. But it sticks in their mind that they have to give the answer. And they may not fully understand why they're naming their price, but they certainly don't forget that they named their price.
Right.
And so the story becomes, some people are like, man, that's amazing. They have us name our price because they're committed to these growers and they wanted us to join them in that commitment. And other people are like, I can't remember why, but it's super cool. They just let you decide how much to pay. Watch, name a small amount and see what the barista does. And that happens all the time, right?
Right.
And so we can't drop it on the ground. It's our unique distinctive.
Right.
But it is this tension of, it can't only be that. It also has to be a product that people want, in a place that people want, presented in a way that people want. I noticed this especially when we started kind of trying to build followings on social media. That like way better responses to pretty pictures of latte art or smiling baristas than stories about coffee growers.
Right.
Right? People just don't care that much. Like it's going through their feed. They scroll by a SAP story, they click on a pretty image of latte art. And so you have to kind of, it's a hard balance. You know? In the end, selling a product is selling a product, and you've got to find a customer that wants it. And then your social mission is the plus on the end. Yeah.
But you definitely feel like your purpose is the competitive advantage, right?
100%. It's my best competitive, but it like tips the scales. If I don't have good quality coffee, if I can't compete with other coffee shops at all, it's not going to bring me up to competition.
Right.
Right. You got to get to baseline of competing with your competitors, being on par with them in the places, quality, accessibility, and then your social mission pushes you over the top.
Gotcha.
You know.
Okay. So then when it comes to and so through that interaction of asking people to name their own price, you feel like that connects them if you look at your overall mission, which is to increase meaning, impact, and community. And if they do these things, then if you do these things well, then people's quality of lives increase. You feel like the interaction between naming your own price moves them a step closer to that, or force them to do that, moves them a step closer? Like, what is it that moves them closer to meaning, impact, and community?
Yeah, I think my goal is that naming your price for a cup of coffee is just enough of a break in your morning routine that you begin to ask questions that you don't normally ask. You begin to consider the potential that you have with small daily choices. My contention is that the life that you like, especially a life like meaning, impact, and community, always starts with steps so small they seem silly. It's almost like, I want to become this kind of person, but it's ridiculous to have to do these little things. Wait till a big opportunity comes. I want to be a person of impact. So for me, that started with picking up trash on the streets of our city, right? Because that was the opportunity that presented itself. What I really would have liked was for the mayor to invite me to a blue ribbon task force on how to solve the problem of litter in Central Florida, but he wasn't doing that, right?
Right.
And so I could wait for a large opportunity for impact to come, or I could take the opportunities that presented themselves to me. And so what I try and do with Credo is create small, simple little steps, with the hopes that if you come in for your morning cup of coffee and you're reminded that your morning cup of coffee has the potential to impact dozens of people's lives, and you're spending that money every day, why not spend it in a way that's a little bit different? It might introduce a habit that moves you in a direction where you start to ask other questions, right? Yeah. Where does my soap come from? Where do my t-shirts come from? Where does my car come from?
So you have the point of origin, the person you buy, but you're trying to connect to your mission or your social mission or your purpose. And then you have the consumer who buys the coffee from you, And then there's a third stakeholder in it, which is your employees or staff. How do you go about articulating the purpose and moving them towards meaning, impact, and community?
Yeah, so I realized like a couple of years ago, we're like, better than 5 years, less than 10 years into this project, how important it was that the purpose that resonated with me about the company, that animated me to get started, how important it was that purpose was in a way that people could articulate all the way through the organization. And so I started to have to think of, how do I take this purpose statement and run it all the way through so that it's actually coming out to the customer all the way. And so I started to do that through, we had always done it through our hiring. I say that I hire for culture over competency. I can teach you how to make great coffee. I can't teach you how to resonate with the purpose of the credo. So the first fence to get over is, do you resonate with the credo? And then are you a person people can have conversations with, and then how much do you like coffee?
Right.
But what I started to do was give them actual artifacts around that purpose. So written statements around, here's our purpose and our culture written down, and affirming who they are. We hire people who resonate with this, and saying that back to them. You are a person who is pursuing meaning, impact, and community in this way, this way, and this way. And then we gave them artifacts to give to customers the first time they come in. So we call it our Credo Manifest. And it carries that mission in a written. So I'm trying to make the purpose mechanical in the organization so that it can't get lost. Removed from human error, right? So now when you come in, you can grab a piece of paper. If a barista fails to tell you our purpose, you have a piece of paper that you can read our purpose on. And trying to make sure that purpose is running all the way through the organization. That's a constant kind of balance and struggle, but I think that it is really important for social enterprises. Otherwise, you're dropping your competitive advantage on the ground.
Okay, so Ben does some other things, and so kind of talk about how those things are components of how you move your purpose, or the purpose that you have. How do those things connect to that?
Yeah, so this is a new realization for me. I was listening to a Simon Sinek talk. I think I sent it to you the other day. And he was talking about the importance of understanding your personal why and your organization's why. And I think this is really key, because especially for entrepreneurs, those things can get really merged. And mine had been merged, I think, and still probably are. And they need to be separated. But this is really important on 2 points. One, I really knew and owned my personal why, my personal mission. Improve quality of lives by cultivating networks of meaning, impact, and community. And that's really animated all of my work. So it's built these 3 coffee shops and this roaster. It's helped build this co-working space that we do together. It's helped build Rally, the social enterprise accelerator. Always looking at, how do I improve quality of lives by cultivating networks of meaning, impact, and community. It's helped spin off some other nonprofits and stuff. But I'm just realizing that that's not an accurate why for Credo Coffee, right? Credo Coffee needs to be, we want to kind of subvert the supply chain and give coffee drinkers an opportunity to have a positive impact on the world, right? That's a more accurate purpose statement for Credo. But the thing I want to say is that the social entrepreneur really needs both of those, and they need to run together. So it's not enough for you to know the purpose statement of your organization, but not have a complementary purpose statement for yourself. Because it takes too much work. It is too hard, and it is too personal starting a social enterprise, right? If it is not aligned with your personal mission, it will feel inauthentic coming out. You'll lose energy or passion around it. You won't be able to rally the right partners together. It is worth taking the time and the introspection to say, what really will build a satisfied life for me? What do I want to look back and be grateful that I accomplished? What sort of person do I want to be at the end, right? And how am I walking in that direction? Then the next question is, how does that align with the mission of my organization? How do those two things go together? I think for social entrepreneurs especially, it's really important to understand both of those. Know how they're different, but know how they run together. And I think that's a mistake I've been making, is because I've been so driven by my personal why or purpose statement, that's overridden Credo's, to Credo's detriment in a couple of ways. And so I'm excited about starting the work of really kind of ferreting out what's the unique purpose statement for Credo Coffee, for Credo Conduit, and really kind of how do I tell those stories more broadly rather than my personal purpose statement, which we've done a good job of communicating that in a way that's accessible to everyone. But I think as we narrow it down, it'll be actually more powerful for customer and advocates for our organizations.
Out of all the fellows, how many of you have a personal purpose statement? You have a personal purpose statement?
Not as cohesive as
Yeah. What about you folks online? How many of you have a personal purpose statement? 1, 2. David Palmer? Ring?
Yeah, I have a personal purpose statement.
Okay.
I mean, that I put on my website and stuff, or just that I have for myself?
That you have for yourself, that runs, that talks as Ben is talking about it, kind of runs concurrently and drives why you do some of the work that you do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a couple.
Okay.
Different levels, but yeah.
Okay. I was just curious to that. So.
Question, Kyle, or something like just to add. And I'm curious what you think about this, Ben. So I didn't have one until I got married, and then my husband and I kind of made one together, and that drives like our family vision, values, and the goals that we make for this year. You do something similar with your wife?
Not that structured, no. Yeah, I think that's great though, and we can now move to talk about our marriages and
I mean, because to answer that question, I actually that resonates. Yeah, I have a personal one, and then my wife and I have one individually. And when we got married, one of the things we talked about is like, how do we create one that's shared, but then not lose our individuals, right? And how do they complement each other? So maybe we can have a talk about that one day. But,
we'll create a marriage session.
Yeah, we'll create right. So you talked about like the work of running a social enterprise being very hard and daunting, and you talked about why a personal mission can help you get through there. Can you go a little bit more into that, and then talk about a time where the work for you got really extremely daunting, and then you remembered your purpose and it helped carry you through?
Yes, I can. I mean, look, the work of starting something, it's easier to think of the times that it was going really great,
yes,
than the times that it was really hard, because most of the time it's really hard. Most of the time, especially when I've only bootstrapped companies, so I don't know what it's like to start with money, but I imagine it's the same thing. It's like, it's really hard,
right.
And there's a lot of reasons to not do it. Like for a while, and this still happens, like my dream job, I think I've told you this before, is like a mail carrier with a walking route. Like, because this is my dream job. Like when I'm frustrated with work and like I don't want to start, or I can't figure out which problem I'm going to try and tackle for the day today. The dream job is like, man, if I could quit and just like go be a mail carrier with a walking route. Because I love the idea that like what I have to do for the day is carry these letters in a bag, listen to some music or a podcast, and walk the same route. I'd be in good shape because I'm walking all the time. Like the scope of my responsibility is get these letters in the mail. Like that's fantastic.
Mail carriers, by the way, aren't all aren't ripped. I've never seen a ripped mail carrier.
I would be.
Oh, you would?
Yeah, I'd be in
Okay.
fantastic shape because I'm walking all the time. But the reason that's my dream job is because when you are starting something, you shoulder all of the responsibility. Like everyone else can leave, you can't leave. Everyone else can go, this is too hard. You can't do that. If you do that, the whole thing quits, right? And so the dream job for me is where I feel like I have the scope of my responsibility is very limited, right?
Right.
Because the hardest part for me is being the one who's like, if I don't remain optimistic or hopeful, everyone else will get pessimistic. If I don't come up with a solution, then there will not be a solution.
Right.
And so I feel like starting something, especially a social enterprise, it's easier to pick out the times that things are going well than to kind of sit and name the things that are going hard. I can tell you that there have been some key points where I knew that my purpose in starting the coffee shops especially were really key decision makers in what opportunities I would take and what opportunities I wouldn't take. So, I mean, the very simple answer is once you have a coffee shop that has any kind of visibility or traction, people want to sell you their coffee all of the time. And I learned pretty quickly that I was paying significantly more than other people were for their coffee. I had not been in the coffee industry. I just like went with this guy with his rotary and started buying coffee from him. And so like my scale was like, how much does it cost? Okay, cool. I'll sell it for more than that, right? And then later I began to realize like what people are paying for their coffee, and I realized I was paying way more, but I was already committed to these people, and that was the reason I was in it. And so it's still my guiding choice on. I have a lot of people that come and say, would you buy coffee from me? I said, tell me the story of where this coffee comes from. Whose hands have been on it? Who's making money off of it? What's the situation of the people growing? And there's a lot of people who can get their coffee to market. What I'm interested in are people who can't get their coffee to market. And how can we get their coffee to the U.S. market? And that's a guiding point, right? I understand my purpose really clearly. It's like the reason I'm in coffee is to have this development purpose or effect at origin, have this positive effect at origin.
So you may sacrifice profit margin or a lower margin over purpose?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the balance?
Well, that's personal. Like there's not a right or wrong on the balance of how much profit you sacrifice for your purpose. I mean,
you can't sacrifice it all, right?
Well, you got to be able
to purpose, then you would be a for-profit or not-profit, right? So for a social enterprise, it seems to be.
I think that you know, if you're a non-profit social enterprise, you may say we just got to pay all of our bills, right, and then you do, and then that's great. But if you're gonna do that successfully, you've got to think about it like a business and like a customer and solve a problem and. But I decided that the measure of success was going to be, because I ended up with stakeholders and shareholders, and I realized it was something I was going to want to build for the long term that did more than just pay me a little bit of a salary, but was something I could build on and plan for the future, something we could own together, that I could create futures for people, create some stability. I needed a profit margin, right? And so I kind of have created a max on what I will pay based on the standard that I set with that first relationship, right? So now I know about where that was relative to the market value of the coffee, and that becomes my standard, really. It's like this relationship that I built here, that relationship defines my standard. And now it's relational rather than cold-hearted capitalist. But I know I can make a profit off of that, and so now I build everything around that relational standard.
Gotcha.
But the way that the amount that you sacrifice your profit for your purpose is a personal, and I've turned down well, I haven't had to turn down, but I got offered some locations, and people wanted me to change the name your price because we were doing percent revenue deals, and they wanted a bigger. They wanted a more predictable rent number based on the revenue. And I told them, like, look, The reason I'm here is to give people the opportunity to name their price on coffee, and they need to be able to pay nothing or $100 for their cup of coffee. That's the reason I'm here. If you don't want a coffee shop that does that, you need somebody else.
So all business isn't good business. Meaning for the social enterprise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like let's talk about, because you're talking about the fact that you make choices to transact business in a certain way, or even do business with certain people based on whether or not there's an alignment and purpose. So that could be raising money, that could be the people you buy from. Talk about like what is kind of like talk more about that and how you and for the social enterprises like how important it is to make sure that value alignments are there.
Yeah, so there's a reason that the purpose is the first block on your social lean canvas, and it's on top of everything else. Is that this is the thing that everything else runs through, right? And so it gets really important to understand your purpose all the way. It's not like a mission statement that goes and then you go back about your work. It's like the animating force behind all the stuff that you're doing. And it gets helpful to be able to have a couple different versions of that. I started this formulation kind of that's like belief statement, problem statement, solution statement that really helps me. So like, I believe our quality of life is more tied to who we're becoming than what we have. And if we become people of meaning, impact, and community, then no matter how much stuff we have, we'll like our lives better. The problem is, in the large and small decisions of our life, the momentum of our life carries us to making decisions based on what we can accomplish or what we can get for ourselves, right? So my solution is to create small steps that break up the small decisions of our lives and challenge us to make them around who we're becoming rather than what we're getting. Let's start with your morning cup of coffee. Let's break up that routine.
Right.
Let's make that about who you're becoming rather than what you're getting, right? And now you see how that purpose, that larger purpose statement that seems philosophical, breaks down to the action of buying a cup of coffee, right? If people don't resonate with that whole arc, right, then that's not a good investor for me. That's not a good business opportunity for me because now if I'm not having people name their price for their cup of coffee, if I'm not sourcing coffee the way, now I'm doing something different. I'm building a coffee shop. I'm not having this impact. I'm not accomplishing this purpose. And so it's important that purpose is like living in you, not just a statement on a wall.
Yeah. And it's very, so I would say that it's an important thing because you don't want to be rudderless, right? And as Ben was saying, as you navigate down the journey, what tends to happen is that the momentum of life and all the things that happen, sooner or later you can start to find yourself operating outside of that, and what you have to constantly do, not only personally but within your organization, is assess whether or not you're truly living along those lines, so establishing those breaks. And so one of the interesting things is, as Ben and I, as we've talked about just briefly, is the work that we do at the Credo Conduit, and the thought around us being a society of individuals and companies who believe that work and life gets better when we come alongside of each other, and thinking about how we not only live that, but we're constantly re-examining that, right? We're re-examining, like, how do we do this in our processes, operationally? Like, it's something that's constantly coming into our scope because we feel like that is our competitive advantage in how we function out there. And so it's really interesting hearing you, you talk about that. And one of the things I want to do is encourage the fellows to constantly go back and to readdress and to not take the purpose lightly. And then once you have it, to constantly assess every opportunity or all the things you do through that lens, and whether or not you're really doing that, or how you can even get better, right?
Yeah.
And so thank you for bringing that up. And so as I said, all money isn't good money, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that what I want to do is take a break here, and ask, are there anybody have any questions that you want to throw at Ben and allow Ben to answer them around purpose? Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question that's kind of around purpose, but what's the average person pay for a cup of coffee when it's $5-10?
Okay, let me repeat that. So because we're filming this, so the question is what's the average
Person pay for a cup
person
of coffee.
pays for a cup of coffee?
Yeah.
So start with answer that question. And what's interesting is what do people actually pay at other places, and what's the difference? And
Yeah.
why would somebody pay more or less?
Yeah. So not exaggerating when I say I started this coffee shop because I wanted to get people thinking about impact. So I had done absolutely no market research. I did it not the way you're supposed to do it, which is probably not a good thing. I should have looked at what other coffee shops were doing, understood the business model, figured out how much money I needed, what kind of runway I needed. I didn't do any of that. I just went to Guatemala, got energized, came back, started making coffee, telling people about Samuel. And so, but that exchange of naming your price, we have varied over the years in order to try and get it right and predictable. And so right now, the average transaction at Credo is $5 to $7, right? And from what I've learned, that's about in the range of what you could expect in a coffee shop. That doesn't mean that people are paying $5 for a drip coffee. It means that if you average out all the transactions, so if they're getting a latte or they're getting a coffee and a muffin or something, the average transaction is about $5 to $7. So when I'm looking at projecting revenue, that's the number that I use. 5 is the number I use.
But see, I learned an interesting metric about you the other day that you keep. I think I just ran across it. That you actually track how much money you lose because people they pay zero, right? Was that did I see that right? It's like there's people who come in and buy, and then there's people who sometimes who don't, right? What if they name their price zero, right? I don't want to pay anything for it, or $1.
Right. That goes into the average.
Oh, that goes into the average.
Yeah. So if they come in and they don't pay, and the way that it works is they come in and the barista says, "Have you been here before?" And they say, "Yeah, man, I've been here all the time." Okay, cool. What would you like to pay today for your cup of coffee? Or, okay, cool, then we're the ones that think buying a cup of coffee is a big deal. What do you want to pay for your coffee today? So then they have to tell a barista, and the barista types it in, right? So that they might say, I don't have anything today. And then the barista will go, oh, okay, we'll get us next time. 0, right?
Right.
Now that does not happen very often.
Oh, it doesn't? Okay.
No.
Why? Okay, because that would be my fear, right? That most of my transactions will be below cost,
yeah,
and then I will be out of business.
Right.
So how do you deal with that?
So we put a suggested range on there because it's important that people know what the value of the thing is. And what we find is that most people just go somewhere in that suggested range, and usually towards the bottom of the suggested range.
The bottom.
Yeah, especially the more they come in. They start off higher, and then the more they're there, they come down to the lower end of the range. And then sometimes if they're in there all the time, they get comfortable enough, they go lower. So it's an interesting thing. We didn't always have them vocalize it to the barista, but I realized that if I wasn't careful, name your price wasn't communicating own your place in the supply chain, buying a cup of coffee is a big deal. If we just were kind of cavalier about it and go pay what you want, we were communicating, actually it doesn't matter how much you pay for your coffee. And so I had to kind of up the responsibility. So making them vocalize out loud to their barista how much they're paying puts a little bit of weight on their shoulders. But you see how the decision for that was, I started paying attention to it because I was looking at my average transaction going, what's going on here? Why are people going down? And I realized, it's because we're becoming too cavalier about it. So we're missing our purpose, actually. We're communicating something opposite to our purpose. Our purpose is buying a cup of coffee is a big deal. We're communicating, don't worry about it. It doesn't matter how much you pay.
Right.
We need to communicate. No, buying a cup of coffee is a big deal. It does matter how much you pay. Not because we need your money, but because you need to be a certain type of person. You like your life better when you are.
Yeah. And are there any other questions?
Can I ask something?
Yeah, just when you state your question, I need to repeat it. So make sure you put it in a form where I can repeat it for you. Go ahead, Angela.
Okay. So local is really important to people. Yeah, I'm the farmer, and we need to charge a little more for products because we're not paying people less money like the imported foods are. And so our challenge has been to explain to our clients that your price is going to stay relatively level because we pay people. And so what I'm trying to overcome is I give them the value proposition and everyone agrees that they want to buy local and they agree that's the best thing to do. But they have to understand their place in the value chain. So I'm trying to, and your story, it resonated with me because I understand the fact that I have to explain it in the value chain. They see it. We show it to them. And they understand the value, but they seem to be unwilling to pay the price for just a living, working wage. They all talk about social justice.
Yeah.
Employees. So I think that one of the challenges that I've been trying to is to work within the commodity market price.
Yeah.
And so you have a commodity coffee beans, and they come straight to you. You've cut out that 92% is really a big thing. So can you help me with what you know about what I do? Help me understand maybe an idea that I can work to help people understand the value.
So Angela is asking, just for people out there. Sorry, there's other people out there. Is it asking how does she better articulate, and what's the framework around articulating the value of what you're offering, especially if you're in the commodities area? Is that what you're asking, Angela? Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
I think this is that how much do people actually care about your mission, and how much do they want the product that gets them what they need, right? And so I can't charge more than other coffee shops because people wouldn't pay it, right? Sometimes people come in and voluntarily pay more than they would pay somewhere else once they're in and they're animated by the mission. But the competing at the market is the base level, and then the social impact pushes you over. So the thing that we would have to think about in the local produce is what price bracket are you in, right? And with your product, and where does your business model take you? Can you compete for the customers you want in that price bracket, right? And if there's a misalignment, then we got to figure out what can we do to make the product less, or what can we do to sell to a different customer base that buys at a different, to offset the customer base that buys at a lower rate, because it's hard to get people to. I think it's hard to get people to pay for repeatable things like food that they have to buy every day. I think it's very hard to get them to pay more just because of the social mission, especially depending on what customer segment you're talking to.
What I'm saying to you is that we are generally under the market for wholesale buys. We are at the market, or percentage within. So when you do our feasibility studies, which we do, we are within the market. But there are times when there's a lot of product in the market and the prices go way down. And obviously we're staying steady because our costs, we've been able to maintain our costs. So it's during those times that we have a dip in revenue. And so what I'm saying is so for instance, if you get a thing of lettuce, it's come from Salinas 9 days to Jacksonville. You have to pay the transportation cost And so all those things are figured at the grocery store chain level.
Uh-huh.
So I'm competing, that's kind of, if I'm doing on a retail, we'll just talk about retail because we're going to talk about farming.
Yeah.
So I feel like part of what you're saying is that like I understand what you're saying. Like there's this volatility that if your pricing is staying here, and there's volatility in the pricing, and so there's times where you're right there. There's sometimes maybe you're right under, and then there's sometimes where you're way above people because you're just staying down the middle. And so which is interesting because I would say that in her case, then that's where the business side becomes like you're still, although you have a social mission, it still doesn't make you still should be trying to figure out how you make processes and things more efficient because you know the volatility, right? So maybe when you know that you're in the fat time, you hoard a certain amount of cash or you do things in some amount of way that helps supplement or is that the right word, supplement or subsidize the leaner times, right? And so I think that that's where you have to get really really focused on like your operations and whether or not you're managing things in a way that not only helps you get through that volatility, but then also just operate as efficiently as possible without sacrificing your social mission. And then the other thing is we talked about this previously is that maybe you can't compete on price and social like people may be unwilling to pay more. But when you think about a commodity or grocery store coffee, there's hundreds of coffee shops, there's a bunch of stores around. And so then the question becomes, which one do I want to shop at, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that I make decisions about shopping at certain places and I pass by certain places simply because I like the social mission. And so, yeah.
Totally. Or you build a relationship, so then you might look at we do monthly cards with people where they can pay for a month ahead of time and then come and use that card every time. So you build some reliable revenue to give you a base. I think that's where the specifics of the business model for the farm and go. We'll have to look at how you build customer loyalty in there so that the volatility doesn't kill you, you know?
Right.
Well, and so just as a side note, I only worked in the wholesale side. Okay, so what I have found is that if I can push products into the market in the summer, then I have a client for the rest of the year because I'm able to supply products.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So one of the things I think, Angela, you're talking about that you're touching on a little bit is what's called lifetime value, and that's going to be very important to investors in terms of like what's the lifetime value of your customers. And how do you extend that, right? And you can extend that through a variety of ways of how you structure pricing, how you the value that you're just creating valuable products and it's just sticky, and then people have to constantly come through it. But then one of the things is you can build lifetime value with purpose, right? Like if your purpose resonates enough with someone where they choose to do business with you over a longer extended period, which we found true at our co-working space, where our people tend to stay with us longer than other co-working spaces, and the reason is not because we provide the best facilities and amenities, it's because they resonate very well with the mission of the conduit. Yeah.
Cool.
Any other questions at all before we close this out? Anybody have
I have a quick question. So for our stage that we're at was the 9. I'm not showing up on my screen. Anyway, so you were talking about how important it is to work with people who kind of align with your values and share your sense of purpose. So where we're at, where there's no money yet, it was kind of assumed and I think obvious that everybody who was like advising us and participating at whatever level kind of wanted to accomplish the same mission as us with women or mental health or whatever. So my question is, how vocal or upfront should I be when I'm reaching out to the people to work with us about our purpose?
So the question is from Sanad is how when talking to people, especially in the beginning, how upfront vocal should you be about your social mission?
Yeah, that's where I think having a simple way to state it becomes really important, and then getting in the habit of starting all of your conversations that way. So like I really like this way of going, here's a positive statement about what I believe. I believe that your quality of life is more tied to who you're becoming than what you have. And if you become a person of meaning, impact, and community, no matter how much stuff you have, you'll like your life better. And then a problem statement. The problem is that in the large and small decisions of our life, we make them based on what we're getting or what we're accomplishing rather than who we're becoming, right? And then a solution statement. My solution is to disrupt small decisions in your life and give you an opportunity to choose them based on becoming a person of meaning, impact, and community rather than what you're getting, right? And that is tight because I stood behind a coffee counter and had to say it to people that wanted coffee 100 times a day for 3 years, right?
Right.
And I got really confident in saying it because people were looking at me not wanting to hear it. And I saw enough times where people were looking at me not wanting to hear it. And by the end of me saying it, they were on my side because they resonated with this belief statement, this problem statement. So then they were interested in my solution statement. And I think that what's really key for social entrepreneurs is to be the people that are willing to lead with belief statements in conversations where people just want money.
Which is hard to do, right?
It's very hard. It's awkward. It's very vulnerable. But what happens is it changes the nature of the conversation you're having, and the people that are willing to go there with you are the ones that you want to partner with going forward. The ones who are not interested in that are like, this person's never going to get it, then they move on. But getting that discipline of going, of starting emails that way, of starting conversations that way. When you get an introduction, this is Susan and Reem, they're starting Sanad. Oh, hey, yeah, we're starting Sanad because we believe women are worth fighting for no matter where they live or where they come from. And that these women specifically we need to fight for in this way. People are going to be like, great, or like, why are you talking about that? The ones that are great are the ones you take the next step with. I don't think you have to beat people over the head with it, but what happens is if you start with that kind of vulnerable belief, problem, solution statement, it'll change the nature of the conversation. It'll open people up and you'll be able to build common ground, and you'll learn really quickly who resonates with your mission and is a good partner for you, rather than just getting bogged down in business conversations and you don't really know what's animating them.
So Susan and Reem, one of the things I would say is that I agree with Ben 100%. And it is a very hard thing to do because what we are tempted to do, and I fight this all the time personally, right? If I'm at the conduit and somebody wants to come in and see, I know that they have a certain amount of time. I feel the pressure that they want to, and then they want to see specific things really quickly. And it is hard to slow them down in the conversation and say, wait, hold on, let me tell you first what I care about. Because I even find myself getting straight to the business portion of it, and I have to stop and pull back and say, let me tell you what we care about. And as Ben was saying, that does change the conversation. And then also personally, when people say, hey, what do you do? Tell me, like, what do you do for a living? It's hard for me, I realize, to explain what I do for a living without first explaining my why. And I know, and it takes me some time to get through it a little bit, although I feel like it's tight, but I have to force myself to do that because it'll only make sense once I explain the why, and people are like, oh, now I get it, and then finally they'll begin to appreciate it. But you do see on people's faces, both from the business perspective and then also personally, you see people's faces, especially in the transactional society, where you see people like, just get to the point, hurry up, get to the point. And that's a tough tension to fight through, but you have to fight through it.
Yeah, no, this is really good advice because that's where I'm at right now, is trying to weed through like who to really utilize, and so that's huge and that's important. And I think long term for like efficiency too, to not be like having conversations with people who don't truly share our mission.
True.
Yep.
So we have time for one more question. Anybody else has a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so my big question, so it bounces right off of you, Suzanne. So I think almost with Move Up, it's almost like we need two statements, right? We need a statement specifically for, the partners, the people who are going to work with us, either purchase from us and we'll digitalize their content, or just, to be part of what we're doing. And then, those statements, do you guys have any specific suggestions, like how to specifically begin that statement with that second market?
Yeah, so definitely your purpose statement and your selling statement are different. This selling statement is closer to your unique value proposition, which we're going to spend a fair amount of time on because that's really specific. And that you've built after you've thought very deeply about your customer segment, their unique problem, and then what unique value proposition you bring and what solution you deliver. So the purpose statement is different from the unique value proposition, and your purpose statement won't make it through usually very often to your sales conversations, to your marketing pieces. It will inform your unique value proposition, but they are different. Your purpose is your animating truth, and it's important when you're bringing on base level partners or investors that they resonate with that. But that's a different thing than selling to customers or end users of your product, which is more your unique value proposition, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a little bit of the purpose finds itself.
It definitely does, but the purpose
On the
finds
packaging.
itself in the UVP or in the packaging because it resonates with your customer and the problem, not merely because it's part of the purpose statement.
Right.
The purpose statement definitely informs everything that comes after it. But I want to stress that we build our marketing to our customer based
Right.
on our customer research, their problem,
Right.
and our purpose will come into that. But because our purpose comes into everything, it's affected what customer we pick, what problem we solve for that customer, all of that.
So to me, what it sounds like Ben is saying to me is that the purpose, the purpose is not. The purpose by itself will not sell your product.
Right.
Right. So if you haven't defined who the client is or the customer is, what the problem that they're subjected to, and then how you come in very uniquely and solve that problem. If you don't articulate that, they will never buy your problem. You can talk, all day about how great you think the world should be and why you exist, but that has to be figured out when selling your product. If you figure that out, then obviously, yes, then you can strap on the purpose statement onto that because you figure that out. But the purpose statement alone won't sell the product. But then, as he's also saying, is that you also have to be able to articulate the purpose to other base level partners because you want to make sure that there's a value alignment there and that you agree on, that you're at least there because then that allows you to do business in a certain kind of way. All right. So good. All right, folks. Well, next week, I think the roles are going to flip. It'll be Ben will be interviewing me, and then we'll be talking about impact, and then after that, we're just going to follow down the chain where we'll through the social lean business model canvas and bring in subject matter experts on that. So other than that, good stuff, and thanks guys for joining us.